Hey guys, welcome back. I'm excited to have you here. Today, this is something completely new to us, and I'm really excited to be doing this. We are going to have just kind of a mama adoption one-on-one talk with my friend Sarah. We actually kind of came across each other's paths on Instagram, and this is actually the first time that we've talked face to face. So this is all new and exciting. And so we are just going to dive in and get to know Sarah and about her family's heart for adoption. And we're just going to talk about all the things. We honestly have nothing planned out. We just figured, like Sarah said, we'll just let the Holy Spirit move where he wants, and we'll just go from there. So I'm excited to have you here. I know you had great hesitation on doing a YouTube video, but thank you for being willing. You have a huge following over on Instagram. And so your Instagram is precious. And I love all of your videos. I went through the other day and just sat and watched all your videos and some of your posts and stuff. So that's your jam, and you do a great job.
I like it. I can go unprivate when I'm feeling a little bit too much input.
Yes.
And then I can go public again when I'm feeling stronger.
Okay, so for everyone who doesn't know who you are, tell us about your little family. Just give us a little brief synopsis of who you are, what your little family is about, how many kids do you have, all those good things.
Okay. I'm Sara Jo, and my husband and I have been married for 13 years, and we have 4 little girls. A 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and 2 4-year-olds. We have they're called virtual twins when you adopt and then you adopt again, and the child has the same exact birth date. So that was quite a shock. And
exact same birth date?
Yes.
Oh yes. My goodness.
And obviously when they're adopted and it's a developing country, and it's not their actual birthday. It's the given birthday.
Yeah.
When the children are found, they get a medical exam, and they kind of give them a birth date based on the medical exam.
Yeah.
So we know that our girls aren't actually twins, but it's just really, really special that God has given them each other. And we feel like they will always be just such a great support. And nobody understands how they feel like they will for each other. So it's just really special.
Yeah. Okay. So what brought your family to adoption?
Well, for me, it started when I was 7 years old. I kind of told you this a little bit, but my mother and her best friend were having like a little coffee date in the living room. And they were sitting kind of at a little table, and I was sitting on the floor holding this gorgeous chunky little boy, and just like loving him up. I'm the oldest of 5, and I was homeschooled growing up as well.
Wow.
And so I just have always been a little mama and always loving on babies. And I'm holding him and I'm like squeezing him and just loving on him. And I'm listening, kind of eavesdropping on my mom and her best friend. And they are talking about adoption. And she's telling about his orphanage and where he came from and what it's like in a developing country. He was adopted from Asia, and in his orphanage there was multiple children per crib, and it was just not the kids aren't getting one-on-one attention. Even the best orphanages, a lot of these places really try, but it's not a replacement for a family. And when I heard what it was like for these kids, I felt like I don't know how to describe it. It was like a really hard prick on my heart, and almost like an audible voice saying, "Will you go?" And when you're 7, you don't think of the money. You don't think of the paperwork. You don't think of like how. You're just like, yes, I will go. I will adopt from a developing country when I grow up. That's what I'm going to do. And I just kind of.
You had childlike faith.
Exactly.
That scripture talks about. You don't go into all the questionings and the what ifs. You just grabbed onto it, what you knew to be the Lord speaking to you, and you held on to it.
Seems so possible, like, sure.
Right.
what I'll do. Thank you. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
And, but then when I was dating my husband in college, I just made sure that he knew that, I come with adoption. So, and
Yeah.
he didn't have any reference. He didn't know anybody who was adopted, and he just had never been around it. And I had been around a lot of it. And he thought it was a good thing, but it wasn't until he watched the documentary, The Dropbox.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
Yes. Yes.
That totally changed his world. And he became just as passionate as me. And so when we got married, we immediately tried to start an adoption process. And we found out two things. You had to be married 5 years. I don't know if that's still a rule.
I think it is. I think it is for most countries.
Okay. And then we found out it was $40,000. And that's when, we were in our early 20s. We didn't have childlike faith anymore, and we're just absolutely like, whoa, that's too much. And we were like eating pasta for every meal. We were so poor. When you first get married, you're so poor.
Yes. You're just living off of love.
Yes. And it was a great time, but I look back now and I realize we just did not have the faith to obey. We let fear of the unknown and fear of the cost hold us back from doing what we knew God was calling us to do.
Yeah.
And so I talk about that all the time on my Instagram because I just don't want people to make that same mistake. We lost so much time. We could have had 10 more by now.
Stan and I talk about that often. Like, what's one regret that you have? And it's just not adopting sooner.
Yes. Oh, girl, I know. And so I just hope people hear that you don't have to be afraid of the cost.
Yeah.
Because he's not asking you to pay for it. He's asking you to obey. And all you have to say is yes. And he will take care of the rest. And it's kind of cool because I think he kind of likes it when we're fully dependent on him.
Yeah.
He likes it when, because if he does it all, he gets all the glory. And I just think that's kind of how he likes it. So 10 years went by and we had 2 biological children and we were just going through life. And always in the back of my mind, I knew I was supposed to adopt, but I would just push it down. Well, we don't have the money. And by this point, we had bought this little farm that we have, and we had a half gutted house. And I'm like, well, maybe someday when we finish the house and some money will randomly drop in our lap. That never happens. Nobody.
Well, you're waiting for all of the stars to align, and I feel like we even do that when you're looking to get pregnant. With your own biological kids. You're like, okay, when is the perfect time, when you're settled in your job or have a certain amount in savings account or like have a house. And at the end of the day, there is never a good time to choose to get pregnant and to raise a child. And there's never a comfortable, easy time to choose adoption. No. But the Lord wants you to just choose it anyways, because in the midst of all of those unknowns, like you were saying a while ago, you have to totally rely on him. And I feel like if we had all the answers and we had all the stars aligned for, on our own, why would we need him to step in? We would be missing a huge component of just the beauty of adoption, because I just find that it's not just about adopting that child and bringing a child into your family, but it is how God completely remakes your heart to be more like his, and just, I guess, remold. Maybe that's what I should say. Just molding your heart to be like his, I feel like is one of the most beautiful parts of adoption. And it comes from those beginning steps of walking into the unknown, but trusting him. So what made y'all finally decide to pull the plug? Okay, we're going to pursue an adoption. What finally got you to that point?
I got a spanking. I got one of my friends just kind of woke me up, She was sharing her adoption story. her little boy was adopted from Haiti. And oh my goodness, he is just precious. And his smile can light up just the whole room. And he's just such a blessing and a gift and so precious. And I was just talking to her like, yeah, I know we're supposed to adopt, but you know, the money and our house is gutted. And she was like, Sarah, I need you to hear me. God does not call you to pay for it. He calls you to obey. And if you know he's called you, then you need to obey. And he will carry you. He will make it all come together. You got to trust him. And she's like, don't you remember? We didn't have the money. Don't you remember we were renovating our house when we were adopting? I'm like, oh yeah. And she said, you know, she just everything that I had as an excuse, she would not let me use that excuse. And she was like, nope, that's not a good excuse. Nope. If you are called, just go.
Yeah.
And that was really what I needed. I just needed someone to give me that little push. And I was like, you are right. Why have we been waiting for everything to be perfect? Nothing will ever be perfect. It wasn't perfect for our biological children. Right. And so why would it be perfect for adoption? So we just jumped out. We had $0. And we just kind of put out a little post on Facebook and said, hey, we feel like God is calling us to adopt. It's $300 to apply. If you feel like God, you know, puts this on your heart to just give us or help us in some way. I don't remember what I said. Within 24 hours, we had $308. Wow. And I don't know why I did not think that would happen. Yeah. But I was just bawling. I thought, what? It was so shocking to me. Yeah. And there's no reason for the money to hold you back. Yeah. Because we're talking about a child's life and people want to help. So
they do. People want to help. Yes. And it's so easy to let the fears of like, I just remember thinking like, why would anyone want to help us? Like everyone has their plate full of life. Everyone, I mean, especially right now with just inflation and the way the economy is. I mean, you know, we just started a Bulgaria adoption and raising $35,000 for that. And I mean, it has just gone over and over in my head. Satan has gotten in my ear. It's like, actually, everyone is struggling. No one's going to donate. No one's going to give to you. You're doing this at the wrong time. Like I've had all those fears and thoughts in my head. Now, being that that's our fourth adoption, I'm aware of those thoughts and I can push through them. But I feel like it's, you know, it's just, I think just human nature to have those fears and those thoughts, but it's acknowledging them and acknowledging where they come from, because the confusion and the fear and all of that doesn't come from God. It comes from Satan. And acknowledging all of that and just honestly punching it in the face and just being like, you're not going to slow me down. I'm going to like run this over, you know. But there's just so many resources and there's so many people out there that want to help that just do it. The Lord will provide. The Lord will provide.
He's the waymaker and the redeemer of every story.
Yeah.
So and this is his heart. So of course he's going to be 100% on board helping you. And so we were originally going to adopt from China.
Yeah.
And we applied for the China program. And because of our low income bracket, we actually did not qualify. And I was devastated because I thought all my life that had been what I thought God had called me to, because the little boy I was holding at the time when God called me was Asian.
Yeah.
And so I just thought he was calling me to Asia specifically. And he was, but it was a different part of Asia.
Yeah.
And so I was just crying to my my case coordinator, and she was like, well, Sarah, what what has God called you to? And I said, I just know that we're supposed to adopt a little girl from Asia. And she was like, oh, Asia. Okay, well, you would be perfect for our India program. They do not have any such requirements. You guys would qualify immediately. And I'm like, is India and Asia?
Girl,
Oh,
yeah, I didn't know.
It is. And the need in India specifically is pretty big. I mean, it's one of the most populated countries in the world. And it has the most orphans in the world. Now, not all of those orphans are available for adoption.
Right.
But there are 31 million orphans, according to UNICEF. There's 31 million orphans in India alone. And I've also seen statistics saying that about 18 million of those are female. And since we already had little girls, God really put little girls on our heart specifically. And we watched the documentary, It's a Girl, on Amazon. And it really talks about just the struggle that little girls have. And so we really felt, okay, this is what we're supposed to do. And I have a cleft lip.
Yeah.
So I just assumed that God wanted us to adopt a little girl with a cleft lip. And then again, he opens doors and shuts doors, and he will guide you. So if you're like, I want to adopt, but I don't know where from, I don't know, where to start, just really let go of what you think and kind of listen to that still small voice. He will guide you. So we just thought, oh, of course we're going to adopt a little girl with a cleft lip, because I have a cleft lip and I can just really relate and help her get through surgeries and bullying or whatever, and then when we were to the phase where you get matched, at the time when we were ready to be matched and we had all of our documents, there were no little girls waiting with a cleft lip. And I was shocked, because it's a birth anomaly. 1 in every 700 babies is born with a cleft of some kind. It's a very common birth anomaly. And but they told me that because of Smile Train, this is incredible. Smile Train has rocked that, and now more children are getting the life-saving surgeries that they need in their home countries, and their families, even better, their families are willing to keep them because of the surgery. So they get to stay in their families, which, that's the ultimate goal. That's God's design, is for children to stay in their original families.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen like that. And we mess it up, and people, hurt kids or whatever. And they don't always get to stay in their original families, but that's kind of what you want. So we were like, oh no. Well, tell us, what is your biggest need? Who are the children who are not being adopted? And our case coordinator said, it's the blind children. Nobody is saying yes to the blind children.
And I just think that shows, this is the part of the story that makes me emotional. And I just keep going over and over in my head, the fact that you're a first-time adoptee in a first-time adoptive family, seeking out adoption, and the fact that your heart was for the ones who aren't wanted. Instead, because, a lot of times it's kind of like, okay, I have this idea of what kind of child will fit into our family, what kind of special needs our family can handle and that I'm comfortable with. But that wasn't where you were at. Your heart was, I want to know about the ones that nobody else wants. And I get so emotional because that's exactly how I feel. And I want the ones that are scary. I want the ones that everyone else is going to run from. And the fact that you were already at that point on your first adoption, I was just like, wow, that's amazing.
Okay. I was not at that point in the beginning. I had this vision in my mind of what my little girl was going to be, and she was going to have a cleft lip. Yeah. And it was, adoption is this refining fire. Mm-hmm. And the more I was in the process and I was doing the paperwork, and God was always working on my heart. And he was always reminding me, this is not about you. This is not for you. This is about the child. This is about me. And so by the time we got to the matching phase, I was in a better place of surrender where, and so was my husband. It was actually really, really cool to also see my husband grow so much. I have fallen so much in love with him because of the man he's become because of adoption.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And so he was scared of blindness. We were both scared when they said that. And I was like, okay, let's not just say no immediately. She's saying these are the kids that are not getting adopted. And that's because everybody's scared, but we don't have to be scared. Let's take some time to pray about it, and let's research, and let's see what does it even look. We knew nobody who was blind. We knew no one. And so we got on Instagram, we got on YouTube, and we started looking, and I found a couple families on Instagram who had biological children who were blind. And it was really beautiful. And I was like, okay, this is not scary. What are people scared of? This is amazing. These kids are so neat. And I just felt like blindness is so cool. Like a whole new way of seeing the world. Yeah. You're seeing with your hands, you're seeing with your ears. And it's not contagious. It's not like, what are people scared of?
Right.
So, but I couldn't find anybody who had adopted a child who was blind. Until I got on YouTube and I found your channel and your story of Isabel, and I found the 6 blind kids, which is a really cool channel where they had adopted 6 children who are blind. They have some other special needs as well, but what they have in common is that they're all blind. And so between you guys, we just learned a lot. It was very educational, very empowering and helpful. And that's why, again, thank you for having this channel and being brave and sharing, even when the meanie heads are, telling you you're not doing it right, and Isabel needs this and that. And there are people out there who are being changed, their eyes are being opened, and they're being moved to do things because of your story. And I'll never forget when I found your video and Stan was crying, and it was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I still cry every time I watch it.
Me too. So I watched it a couple times, and I had my husband watch it, and I had my mom watch it, and we really just felt like God was saying, no, you can't do this on your own, but I will be with you. And because of me, you will be able to love a little girl who's blind, and you're not going to be enough without me, but with me, you will be enough. And I'm like, okay, we don't know Braille. We don't know anything, but we're going to say yes.
Yes.
And because there were so many kids who were blind that were waiting, within 45 minutes of getting CARA approval, CARA is like the overhead India people. They approved our file, our home study, and said, yes, these people can adopt from India. We were matched with Ellie Pearl within 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
That's because there are so many blind children waiting.
Yeah.
And her head was shaved like Isabel's. She was wearing little boy clothes. She was on a little mat with a bunch of other children crying in the background. And she was just playing with a toy.
Yeah.
And she dropped the toy. And even though she could not see, she is completely blind with no light perception or anything. She dropped the toy. And at 1.5 years old, she was able to immediately find that toy and pick it up again. We're like, this girl's a genius.
Yeah. So you have 2 biological girls. How old are they again?
10 and 7.
10 and 7. So, what's their take on adoption, and what has their experience been? How have you seen it change your little girls?
I tell people this all the time because they're so worried, will we love this new child because
Mhm.
they're not of our blood? And will our children be okay? Will this traumatize them? I think preparing them is very important. So not just
Mhm.
like springing it on them, but
Yeah,
constantly talking about it, praying for your child together, and bringing them into the adoption process with you. So by the
yeah,
time we got Ellie Pearl, there was no like real surprises. They knew they were getting a sister. They loved her immediately. I have videos and pictures of them just holding her, and they did amazing. They did really well. Avonlea, the only thing I would notice is that she would just kind of get those looks like mom is holding that baby a lot. Like, but
yeah,
there was nothing major, no regressions or weird things. I don't know if it was because they were in a really good age, or if it was just the Lord, again, we prayed for that as well. But they just did amazingly well. And
yeah.
and so and some people will say to me, well, if you're adopting a child with special needs, like, have you thought about down the road when you're gone and you're going to put a burden on your older girls? They're going to have to take care of this, these children with disabilities. And I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm not worried about that, because first of all of our children are the Lord is taking care of them. It's not really us. We're stewards. We're training them and
Yeah.
nurturing them and protecting them, but they're really in God's hands all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not going to worry about that. And also, what I've noticed is that my girls have grown. They've grown tremendously in
Mhm.
their ability to love all people and to recognize that God doesn't make mistakes. He only makes beautifully unique works of art.
Yeah.
And to give people that maybe, have a disability, or maybe they have a birth anomaly or something along those lines, and they're different, to just love them and not
Mhm.
worry about that, not even really pay attention to that, and just see
Yeah.
them as a person and love them as an individual.
Yeah. And I think that people that ask those questions, we've had people ask us and leave comments such as like, why adopt a child like Isabel who isn't going to be a productive member of society? Like, why not adopt someone who's going to like contribute to society in I guess, a normal fashion? Like, I had someone, a Christian man, he asked me one day, he was like, so when are y'all gonna quit adopting all these kids? Like, just when are you gonna quit adopting them all? He was like, you know that they have special needs and you know that there's already a place for them in heaven. So just let them be. They're gonna be in heaven. And I was in the gym working out and I just was like,
So
I
like
just,
let them die? Is
huh?
that so like let them die kind of thing?
Yeah, just let them be, let them remain an orphan because at the end of the day, they'll end up in heaven, and it'll all be okay. I don't even know, I don't even remember what I said. But my point is these people see kids with special needs, kids with disabilities as a burden. And I really just pity for those souls who don't value life no matter what it looks like. And I know that their comments and that mindset comes from just pure ignorance. I mean, we're all ignorant on certain things, but it just comes from pure ignorance. And it makes me so sad that people can't and choose not to embark on a journey that will rip your heart to shreds, and the Lord will put it back together so beautifully and create this heart that your girls already have at such a young age because y'all have chosen adoption. Y'all have purposefully and intentionally involved them in every step of the process of adoption. And I mean, it's just like the Lord, how the Lord has prepared your heart. You didn't think about adoption and like, oh, well, I'm going to go for a special needs that I know nothing about. I mean, he pecked away at your heart little by little. And he does that exactly with the kids, with your biological kids. It's like little by little, step by step, every prayer, every conversation you have with them, every picture that they see of their new sister coming home, or orphans who may never have a family, like that is just pecking away at their heart. And it's creating them to have this unconditional love that I just don't think that they could ever develop if they hadn't walked through an adoption. Like our kids, we sound very similar, and all of our kids have had really amazing experiences with bringing our girls home. Even the sleepless nights of Isabel screaming and crying, like they never complained, not once, never complained. And that can only be a God thing. That can only be because we have pretty much handed our kids over to the Lord. And we're like, God, you're going to have to mold them. You're going to have to refine them just like you're doing us. And I just think it's such a disservice to try to protect your kids from hardships in life, because I feel like that's where you grow the character, and that's where you grow this, I mean, this unconditional love that it sounds like your girls have. And so when you look down the road and you look at like who's going to take care of these girls when y'all are gone and pass, I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Your girls are going to be like, we're going to take care of them, because that's just what you do. It's like ingrained in who they are. And I just feel so sad for people who choose not, who allow those fears of like wanting to protect, not allow those fears. I feel bad for people who feel like they need to protect their biological kids from hardships in life and from things that might be challenging, because what's on the other end of it is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. I wouldn't change it for anything, and none of my kids would change it for anything.
We try to teach our kids like a human's intrinsic value comes from the Lord, our creator. It does not come from where you were originally born. Our value does not come from our abilities or what we can do. Our value doesn't come from what we look like. Our value simply comes from the Lord. And so that kind of wipes all that out.
Yeah.
And it's interesting also how once you're in the adoption process, it kind of changes your whole view of life. And you start like, I was originally, how I got followers on Instagram is that I was a decorating account, and I would be making my house pretty. And as an artist, I was so passionate about making my house pretty. And it's very hard for me to continue doing that because while I still love decorating, God has completely changed my heart. And it just doesn't give me that same zing anymore. I don't have as much passion. I try to keep sharing decorating because I know that's what people want to see. And I still decorate.
Yeah.
But those things, you can't take any of that with you to heaven.
Right.
Literally nothing. I can take none of this with me to heaven.
Yeah.
Human souls are the only thing that's eternal. And so they're the only thing really worth our time and energy. So why would you adopt a special needs child? Because they are a precious soul.
Yeah.
And they are so valuable, so priceless. God died for them, just like the able-bodied people. He died for the people who can't see or who don't have an arm or whatever it is. Yeah. He died for all of us, not just the ones that can contribute to society. Yeah. But they do contribute though.
Oh my gosh.
In just like this really incredible way, and grow all of our hearts. And Ellie Pearl has changed everybody, whoever meets her or sees her. And just
it's amazing. I think this is something you and I were talking about in our messages the other day. Like, adoption matters for eternity. And what you were just talking about, how your once passion was decorating, and while you still love it and share it, you have this new passion that actually matters for eternity. And it's one that is not self-serving, and it doesn't serve Sara Jo, it doesn't serve Ashley, it serves the kingdom. And I just Stan and I went to dinner, I don't know, a while back. And we were just sitting there having conversation with all the people at the table. And it was mindless conversation. And I don't know why I'm even getting emotional talking about this, but it was just mindless conversation. Just what'd you do today? What concert have you gone to? Like, just, and like I left and Stan did too, just like, not that any of that conversation was bad. It was all fine. But I'm like, we didn't talk about things that matter. Like everything that they spoke about was so surface level. And I'm just like, these things don't matter for eternity. Like, we're not ones that we have to sit around and talk about adopt. Everyone needs to talk about adoption with us 24/7. But like, let's talk about the things that matter: your marriage, your parenting, your relationship with Christ, adoption, because those are the things that bring glory to Christ. And those are the things that matter for eternity. And so, like, exactly what you're saying is so much of our family's mindset is just we strive to cut out the things in our life that don't bring glory to him, or that are self-serving, or that don't matter for eternity. Like, I don't want to fill my plate of life with something that really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And that just sounds exactly like what you're saying. And your kids are seeing that. And so what a testament it is for your little girls who are going to grow up to be adults who, I pray and I hope that the journey that our kids have seen us walk through, is going to push them into pursuing the hard things, not just facing the hard things when they come at them, but like looking, you know what I'm saying? Like, adoption is hard. And the fact I pray that my kids say, I'm ready, willing, and able to walk through the hard for that child, because it matters for eternity. And so, and that all begins with me and you and our husbands setting that example for our kids. And those are the things that matter for eternity. I don't even know if that makes sense. I get rambling, but I just see you so much.
I have that same experience now where I'm in a big group and we're just chatting about, oh, what movie have you seen? And this is my favorite show. I just watched, and I just can't get into it anymore. Because I'm thinking, but kids are dying. Like, do you know? Do you know? Like, and I always think, like, on your deathbed, with your last breaths, you will never wish that you would watch more TV, that you had bought a boat, or that you had bought more stuff, or that you had gone more places and had more experiences. You will only wish with your last breath that you had invested more in the kingdom, because that's where you're going. And you'll realize, what a waste. What have I been doing with my entire time? We're here such a short amount of time, and let's just do things that matter.
Now y'all are fixing to head back to India in the near future to bring home another sweet little one. Can you just tell us briefly, like, about that whole?
So we were still in India with Ellie Pearl, and we had made it. Like, the whole gauntlet that we had been put through, we survived, the years of paperwork and the fundraising, the like humbling fundraising. I shouldn't say humiliating, the humbling fundraising, just every step of the way, it's a struggle. And we were holding our baby and we were driving to the airport and we were like, yes, we did it. We're going home. And we stop at a stoplight just like a few miles from the airport. And it's like 10:30 at night, pitch black out. And we look over and we had seen a lot of people begging in India. But this just was beyond anything that we had ever seen anywhere we had ever been. We look over, and right at a stoplight, there was a little girl about the same age as my oldest daughter. And she was filthy, ratty hair, wearing rags. And she had a baby strapped to her back, a little baby. And the baby was crying and had snot running down its face. And their eyes were really big. And they were asking for food and for money. And we don't know for sure if they were being sold or what was going on to be at a stoplight in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
That absolutely broke us to see that, to be within touching her, like so close we could have touched her. And you're not supposed to, the agency tells you you're not supposed to give money to the beggars, and which was one of the hardest things for me. I just couldn't handle that. And so we just gave her a water bottle and some granola bars, and we gave her some money because
I would have done the same thing.
We just couldn't handle it. And she couldn't speak English. But her eyes and her face were saying, "Help me." And I still think about her all the time.
Yeah.
And pray for her. I don't know where she's at. But this was so close. We were almost home, and I felt the Lord say again, "I want you to adopt another little girl from India." And I'm like, okay, but we just did this. And I kind of argued with him a little bit in my mind. And I just thought, well, no, that's just my emotions.
Yeah.
I'm just being emotional. This is not the Holy Spirit talking to me. I pushed it down and tried to move forward. We got on the plane. Ellie did really surprisingly well on that. What was it, 30 hours of travel to get home? And it was just absolutely precious how much the girls loved her and her grandparents loved her. And I kept kind of bringing it up to my husband, and he was like, we are not doing that again. That was horrific. So it had been probably 6 months, and all three girls were on top of daddy. And he just tickling them and talking to them and hugging them and kissing them and doing everything that a good daddy does. Yeah. I just look over at him, and we met eyes, and we both were like, okay. And he said to me later, okay. I said, every little girl deserves to have a daddy like you. And boom, he was
that's all. Yeah.
That's all I needed to hear. And he was like, you're right. And I think we have room for one more. And that was kind of
you're like, okay, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. So with the last adoption, I was so overwhelmed by paperwork, and fundraising terrified me. And I had all these weird fears. This time I didn't have as much of that. Yep. Like you, I still have fears. I still have worries, but I'm able to push through them now because I know the truth. I felt this sense of urgency, and I still don't 100% know why that is, except for the little girl we got matched with was the oldest possible child to the day that we could have matched with. And if we had waited any longer, she would have aged out of my husband's one request. He said, we can adopt again, but I want to keep birth order.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So we put 0 to 3 because Ellie was 3 at the time. And this little girl, like I said earlier, has the same exact birthday. So this is the oldest possible child to the second that we could have possibly been matched with. And I felt like we should adopt an older child because the little ones, they tend to get matched a little quicker.
Yeah.
So that's the story.
So, and the new one, is it Evie?
Evie. Mm-hmm.
Evie. She's also blind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she, I guess, probably doesn't have the best health and hasn't been taken care of super great. But I mean, it's amazing, like hearing you talk about Ellie and how she has just defied all the odds of what the doctor said she could and couldn't do. And she just continually blows your mind. It doesn't sound like y'all have done anything medically huge, no huge
Nothing.
interventions.
Nothing.
You clearly have never dealt with a blind child.
We just
Like
loved her.
it's just love. It's
We
just
loved
love.
her.
I posted on Facebook last night. Little Isabel was constantly wanting my hand. And it just, that's what love heals. I mean, like that's all that we have given her to cause this huge transformation. And I mean, it's exactly what little Ellie has experienced, just love and safety and nourishment and just protection. I mean, it has completely changed her life, completely changed her life. And she's thriving. I mean, and there's no doubt that it's going to be the exact same way with little Evie when she comes home.
Evie is, she's been in the orphanage longer. She's been waiting 4 years for a family. And so she's 4 and she cannot talk. She just learned to walk. And she has a lot of other struggles. And so even though on paper it just says that she's blind, we don't know. She might have other, disabilities or, and this time we're a little braver and we're willing to be like, okay, Lord, we saw your hand and we know that you are good. And we know that you will carry us through no matter what her diagnosis is. So I'm not saying that I'm not scared that she's not talking or the possibility that she will never talk. But I'm just a little bit more able to rest in God's hands, a little bit more. And so I'm just trying every day, pretty much. I have to resurrender that fear because it is harder to communicate if the child is blind and they can't speak. I know you've had to deal with that.
Yeah.
And again, you guys have really helped us by being willing to share your story. It's empowered us to say, okay, we could do that. That's not scary.
Yeah, it truly matters. What you say matters, what you're doing matters, and it is impacting other families. And there's so much that, we won't see. We won't see the impact, the full impact of it all. But what I do know is just having one family say, I saw your story. I was scared, but I did it anyways. And we just brought this little guy home. I mean, how can you you keep it to yourself?
Even if it's just one family that that is empowered by your story to just push through the fear and do it anyway. That's huge. And I mean, you definitely impacted our story and willingness to say yes to blindness. And especially Stan, I feel like there's a lot of men specifically who are afraid of adoption. I told you this. I gave Stan, this big, tough, strong police officer, get on social media and cry and tell the beautiful testimony of what God has done in his life and about how God brought him, these 2 precious little girls. I mean, it is probably the most powerful testimony I've ever seen and hugely impacted my husband. And I'm sure lots of other husbands, because I feel like God wires men as protectors and protectors and providers. And so to them, it doesn't make sense to add this financial thing and all of these scary unknowns, and it's not safe to go these places and all these things. That's the first thing that comes to their mind. And mommy, we're wired to be nurturers. And so we know those things and we see those things, but our first thought is the precious children. And we're able to kind of a little bit push through that.
Yeah.
And my husband has started giving his phone number out
Sweet.
Two, two men that are struggling, if they're willing to talk to him, he is willing to just sit and answer whatever questions and be real and honest about how he had fears and what God has done. And we've seen just my husband's voice specifically impact so many men and families. And
I love that.
it's a
It's so
ripple
good.
effect. It's a ripple
It
effect.
is.
So Stan impacted my husband, and now my husband is able to impact other husbands. And I
Yes.
agree, you should share. And remember, I was scared to do this.
Okay. Well, I guess we need to close this out here since we are about 2 hours into this conversation. And I know that you and I both could keep talking for a lot longer, but in the future, we'll just have you back on because I love your mindset. I love your heart. I love what your family's doing. And I know that people need to hear what you're about and why you do it. Because at the end of the day, it's all about um, impacting the kingdom of God. And I know that that's why y'all have chosen adoption.
Well, thank you for having me on your space here and in your circle of influence. I love how you're using it for the Lord, and I'm honored that you would have me on here. And so now you're going to have to come over to my little circle of influence,
Yes.
and would love to share your story in there. And so,
I would love to. I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Instagram, they kick us off. They're like, your life has gone too long.
6 hours later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Okay, guys, we're going to close it out here. Thank y'all for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.